Hi, my name is Bianca Pashola. I'm the CEO of Six, and welcome to the Challenger Exploration Live Investor Summit. I'd like to start today by introducing our presenter, Kris, CEO and Managing Director of Challenger Exploration. To kick things off, we'll be playing a recording of Kris telling the company story, and then we're going to come back on live to accept questions. You can submit your questions in the Q&A panel on the right-hand side of your screen. So without further ado, we're going to disappear, but we'll come back on shortly.
Good morning or good afternoon, everybody, and I'd like to thank all of the investors for jumping on. I'll spend about 25 minutes walking you through Challenger Exploration, and then we'll have some time for questions at the back end. Now, that cover photo is our Hualilan Gold Project in Argentina there. The mineralisation outcrops in the hills, and we're drilling out under the plains now. Great logistics in the area. I'll click through to the summary. So Challenger... sort of key outline, we've got two projects, both complementary. We've got a high-grade advanced gold project in San Juan in Argentina, been locked up in a dispute for 15 years, so it's seen no modern exploration. There's an historical resource there of 627,000 ounces at 13.7 grams gold. Now, sort of up front, if you look at the average grade of all the drill holes, it's about 10 grams gold equivalent. So when we do come out with a JORC resource, it will be in the order of 10 grams gold. That historical resource is a little high, but having said that, 10 grams gold is still a very high-grade gold deposit. In Ecuador, we picked up a concession about 18 months ago. Some fantastic scout drilling, I suppose you'd call it, done by Newmont. Intercepts of 156 metres at 2.5 grams gold, over 100 metres at 0.5 gram gold, 0.5% copper, in sort of vertical breccia pipes that really were never followed up. We spent about $600,000 US doing some geophysics, because the key with a porphyry system is how deep is it. And then really when we saw the geophysics, we ran silent until we consolidated all of the ground in the region. We've just sort of completed our first hole where we've got 134 metres at 1 gram a tonne gold, 4 grams silver, including a high-grade core, and basically we now think we're onto a very large gold system in Ecuador, a large bulk deposit. A little bit about the company. Fully diluted market capitalisation of about 200 million. And in terms of the major shareholders, myself, I own 10% of the company. My chairman owns just over 5% of the company. And we've got some significant skin in the game. I paid a couple of $1 million for my shares. My chairman put in about $1.3 million at 10 cents in our last raise. My background, I'm an exploration geologist by training, worked as an exploration geo, then got into the markets as a mining analyst, and really was sort of an investment banker for about 10 years. I jumped out 8 or 9 years ago, got control of a little shell. We put some Saudi Arabian assets into it. And 5 years later, after going through a DFS, we were taken over for $1 billion. Fletcher, who was our chairman, he was the founding chairman of Citadel with me, and Scott Funkston, who's my CFO. Scott, I've managed to pick up after Avanco Resources, which was a startup in Brazil. Scott was the founding CFO. They took that through exploration, drill out, DFS, and into production, and they were taken over by Oz Resources for about 500 million. So, the three key management team all understand what it takes to take a startup and then turn that into a big corporate exit, and that's the plan here. So I'll talk about the Hualilan Gold Project. I've discussed the historical resource. Key here is we sit in San Juan province, which is a tier 1 mining jurisdiction. You've got Barrick sitting there with Veladero, which is in production. You've got Lundin Group about to start production on Jose Maria. Fortescue have just picked up some stranded porphyries in there. Very easy place to work. Very good system. We get our drilling approvals through in about 3 weeks. Our tenure, we're on granted mining leases, and we've applied for and will be awarded the 26 square Ks around it. But, we could start mining in 3 or 4 weeks if we wanted to. It's pretty simple metallurgy. The gold, actually, you get 80% of the gold and silver out into a gold-silver concentrate. We're redoing the metallurgy now. It hasn't been done for 20 years. We hope we'll get a little bit better than that. But, again, at 10 grams a tonne, 80% recovery, the project will be lowest cost quartile. There's good infrastructure. We sit around about 400 metres from a double-lane sealed highway. We've got regional power lines being built within 2 kilometres of site. Having said that, though, you probably still run with diesel unless we find a porphyry underneath, which there may be. And we're only 1,000 metres elevation, so you can really work all year round in the field. And sort of what's happened since we started drilling, the original strategy was to go in there, get a small scale plant in operation, maybe do 50, 60,000 ounces a year out of the historical resource. After our first bunch of drilling, we've realised this system is open in all directions and is a large system. So really now there's been a strategy change where we need to drill this out now and find out just how big it can be before we look at production scenarios. This is the style of thing we're seeing. This is a cross-section from one of our recent holes. We've actually picked up a bunch of assay results late last night that should be out to the market pre-open this morning, so I'm free to talk about them. The style of thing we're seeing, that cross-section shows a typical sort of body. The two blue holes are our holes. That red hole, hole 24, we're waiting for assays, and then some more proposed holes. The kind of results you typically get here are, 6 metres at 34, 6 metres at 14. This is from our first bunch of drilling. In terms of where we are now, we've drilled 36 holes. We've now got the first 8 back this morning. We finished some metallurgical drilling, and there's another 50 holes that we'll drill. So you'll have continued news flow for really the next sort of 3 to 4 months. And, just on those first holes, so, look, we've got a great batch of results. Hole 20, we've got 8 metres at 21 grams gold equivalent, including a high-grade core in there of 5 metres at 26 gram gold. That extended the mineralisation 40 metres along strike. Hole 18, we've got 3.8 metres at 12 grams gold equivalent. That extended the mineralisation another 25 metres along strike the other way. And then some drilling down at the south where we've got 9.5 metres of mineralisation, averaging around about 7 grams gold equivalent. So a really solid set of results this morning. All 8 holes have intersected mineralisation, and it just confirms mineralisation is open in all directions. And this gives you a picture of what the ore body looks like. This is the mineralisation in 3D. So there's 2 distinct halves, the northern half of the deposit and then the southern half of the deposit. These drill results this morning from the southern half of the deposit. And what we see is basically 2 sets of sort of lodes. You've got east-west faults, which are the Magnata vein and the Sanchez vein. They're very deep faults. They control the mineralising fluids. The fluids have come up those faults and then intersected the limestone units, which are soluble, and replaced those with sort of dipping lenses of massive sulfides. And, if you look at the historical drilling, most of the historical drilling was just done under the old adits and shafts. They were just chasing assay results. As we're now stepping this out, we're finding that these lodes are tending to join and look like they do want to join. It's not going to be continuous, but that's 2 kilometres of strike there. There's been 1 hole drilled in the middle of those 2 lodes that intersected a metre at 1 gram gold almost and 2 grams silver. So, this is a very big system, and really the only thing holding it back is drilling. And this is just the same sort of area, but we're looking at a plan view, so looking straight down. The key takeaways here are the green are basically the potential fertile structures, the east-west faults or the limestone units. The red dots are where we have actually identified mineralisation in the field. And the little yellow blobs there, that is the historical 600,000 ounce resource, only down to 125 metres. Open everywhere. We've pushed it down 50 metres in 3 or 4 locations. We've got a couple of holes that are pushed at 50 metres along strike. So, again, we'll know how big this system is in 12 months, and it's really just a case of now we need to get in here and drill this thing out on 40-metre centres and find out whether this is 1 million ounces or bigger, and hopefully it's going to be a lot bigger than that. So, again, just to wrap up, so that photo on the right there shows, the actual Julian outcrop. That little sort of red area, that is that 2K, explored extent. If we come sort of about 500 metres down to the south, to the right, there's mineralisation outcropping there, which has never been looked at. There's sort of 4 or 5 kilometres of unexplored strike to the north and the south. 5 k's north is another similar high-grade gold deposit, which is not ours, but that whole trend there, if this was in Kalgoorlie, it'd have a couple of thousand drill holes on it already, down to 1,000 metres, and we'd know how big it is. So look, your key milestones that are coming. What we will release this morning is basically 8 of about 80 holes, so 10% of the current drilling program that will be done in the next 3 months. We've sent the samples off for metallurgical test work, and again, when we look at the met work, the sort of key for us is it doesn't look like there was a fine enough grind done, so hopefully we'll get better than 80% recoveries, but if we don't, it's still going to be a low-cost operation. You'll get a JORC compliant resource later on this year, and really that is just a factor of, we've got a lot of work here to make sure that we capture as much as we can in this first JORC resource. There's nothing worse than putting out a resource that we know will be much larger. And then really, assuming we keep drilling for the rest of the year, which is the current plan, you'll get a second resource towards right at the back end of the year as well. Now, I'll talk about our Ecuador project. So again, I've mentioned some of these historical results, wide ore grade intercepts. And, this drilling was conducted by Newmont. And when we have a look at the drilling they did, we know that none of the Newmont personnel ever went to site. You've got a couple of holes there that ended in 5 grams a tonne gold mineralisation. We look at half of their holes and they look like they terminated too shallow for the target they were aiming at. And there's 3 or 4 holes there, the first 4 holes, where you've got widths up to sort of 250 metres at almost 0.5 gram gold, visual chalcopyrite or copper ore logged in the holes, never assayed for copper. So it's just your typical, big company didn't pay attention to detail. And again, what we did is we've done some detailed surface mapping, soil geochemistry and geophysics to get a feel for how deep the potential porphyry targets are. This is the sort of, the model. So what you see here in the middle are, our high grade results sit in intrusive breccias. That's 20 million year olds, intrusive breccias, diorites, porphyry diorites. If you have a look to the right, the Cangrejos project, that's owned by Lumina Gold. That sits 10 kilometres along strike. It's now a 17 million ounce ore body where they've just finished their pre-feasibility study. It will do 400,000 ounces a year at $600 all-in sustaining. And that sits in exactly the same 20 million year age, intrusive breccias, diorites. You look at the scale of that in the red circle, and we have one drill hole in the middle of our higher grade drill holes. We've now identified some more breccia pipes in there. So we've potentially got a Cangrejos style target, and then the porphyry targets below. And if you look to those 3 holes there on the top right, they're those 3 holes where there were, big widths of chalcopyrite in the holes that were never assayed for copper. And, that is indicative of what you see above a big porphyry system. You've got copper leakage from the system. If you just sort of bear that sort of model with the 3 porphyry targets in your mind, I'll then go through. This is our first east-west line of geophysics to the same target, and you can see there in purple, you've got these 3 deep porphyry, well, not deep, they're 250 metres square. So you're looking 300, 350 metres from subsurface. It looks like, what we're seeing here is the tops of the porphyries are chargeable from the pyrite. So, again, this is a big sort of system with 3 big porphyry targets. Now, having said that, as much as these are great targets, I'm not naive enough to know that when a junior explores for a porphyry system, they generally don't find it on the first hole, they find it on the 21st hole. And if you're drilling $200,000 to $300,000 holes, that is a very easy way to destroy shareholder value. So the plan here has always been spend the majority of our money on the Julian project, where we will end up with a big high-grade resource. And then once we've sort of generated a re-rating for shareholders, then we'll raise a decent chunk of money and come back and then drill out these properly where we can afford to drill 30 or 40 holes. And if they're not there, you walk away. And this is just another target we've got. We did 2 IP lines. IP sees chargeability, and the reason we only did 2 IP lines is basically we weren't sure there would be anything here within 800 metres of surface. So you can see these 3 historical holes here that got over 100 metres at 0.5 gram copper, half a gram gold, 0.5% copper, and you go sort of 200 metres down dip, you've got a big chargeability anomaly that's 3 times wider, 3 times more intense, which is that 24A and then 24B. 24C is another sort of similar chargeability anomaly that doesn't look like it gets to surface. We've now gone up and had a look at surface in, see what we can see in outcrop. And, while that intrusive breccia doesn't get to surface, all of the fractures up there on top of that hill above 24C are all stained green and blue with copper. So you've got a significant copper source below. And, as part of tying in the geophysics with the drill core, we measured the chargeability response in all of the core, and really what you see is a fairly straight line relationship between the chargeability response and the grade, and it's a simple factor of more sulfides, more chargeability, more grade. So you would hope there that again, that's a world-class target. You 300 metre wide sulfide body that's both of those 24A and 24C 100 million tonne envelopes. But again, that sits on a 60-degree slope. And the risk there is that the signal's a little smeared, so we'll go back in and do a 3D IP grid over there so we can really pin down those targets before we drill them. again, I don't want to risk shareholders' funds unless we've actually done the best job of defining them. And now I'll sort of get on to, I suppose, what's been the game changer for us in Ecuador. The concession there in the red is the original concession we had. As soon as we saw that geophysics, we've started to increase the footprint. We've now picked up that pink concession to the north. Now, that concession is held by some artisanal miners. They're producing about 10,000 ounces of gold a year. And look, they told us in our DD and our meetings that they had porphyry mineralisation on their ground. They told us that intersected porphyry mineralisation in their drill core they'd never assayed. They said they had a 120-metre exposure in one of their declines going down to the high-grade gold of what they thought was porphyry. And basically during DD, we've sort of jumped on and had a look, and this is the style of thing we saw. That drill core there, you can see that's a typical porphyry B vein with chalcopyrite in there. That exploration adit there, we've mapped about a 300-metre exposure of porphyry mineralisation. We had just panel sampled the top sort of 30 metres of that, and the panel samples averaged about 1.5 grams gold, some silver, 0.2 copper before the COVID shut down over there. Now, we started again 2 weeks ago, so we're back on the ground. But, they're two great targets. And then, they've also got almost 60 historical drill holes where basically they'd assayed bits and pieces of them for gold only where they thought it was high grade. They were effectively chasing feed for their high grade mill. I mean, we jumped in and had a look at some of the drill core and saw what we thought were really wide zones of potential mineralisation. And, we've announced about a week and a half ago, we re-assayed the entire first hole. And, that was done on the basis of it was an interesting looking hole, by no means the best, but it was the first hole we had to hand. And, it confirmed we've got a big gold system here. That hole went 150 metres at 0.9 grams gold, 3.8 silver with a higher grade core of 134 metres at 1 gram, and then 60 metres within there of 1.6. So, it is a big system. We've now got, it's actually 7 more holes that we've put in for assay. We should hopefully get 3 or 4 more holes back in the next 2 weeks. And really now the field work will all be focused on re-logging these remaining holes. So, we'll send them in and re-log and then assay these holes over the next sort of 3 to 4 months, and that will give us a good picture of what we've got. Just some sort of regional work. So this is the soil geochemical work they did. You've got these big traditional A, B, C, D and E gold, copper and moly soil anomalies that look like they could be porphyry targets. And then where this hole was drilled, it's sort of south. There's no geochemical signature. There's a cluster of drill holes there where they've chased this sort of structure that I think the artisanals were mining. And the logical question there is, why did they drill it? It clearly isn't where you would want to put a drill hole if you're chasing a big sort of porphyry target. And, this just gives you a closer look. This is a cross section on the right showing that sort of discovery hole. And, when we look at the core, it's not a traditional porphyry body. It's less than 1% sulfides. There's a strong correlation of the gold with antimony and arsenic and bismuth and tellurium. And it looks like it is in a really big shear zone. The fault over that sort of 150 metres is all chopped up. It just looks like a very big regional fault structure. In many sort of senses, it's actually similar to an intrusion-related gold system more so than a porphyry. And, just the context for that type of intercept. So, Fort Knox reserves of 300 million tonnes at 0.43 grams gold. They're producing 200,000 ounces a year at $1,000 all in sustaining. Dublin Gulch, they've got reserves of 150 million tonnes at 0.6 grams gold. They'll produce 200,000 ounces a year at 774 grams all in sustaining. And I know they're both heap leach operations, but I could have equally spoken about Lumina Gold's King Rios project, which is about 7.5 kilometres northwest of this one, where they'll treat their ore through a mill. They'll produce a gold copper concentrate, and that'll do 400,000 ounces a year, $600 an ounce all in sustaining. So the key takeaway is, that intercept there of 150 metres at 0.9 is eminently economic. And I'll just zoom in on that. So what we're seeing here is the historical drilling done by the artisanals, and we've overlaid it on a gold in antimony anomaly because the gold here is strongly associated with antimony. And what you can see is that, the current drilling they've done defines a zone about 500 metres long, 200 metres wide, defined down to sort of 400 or 500 metres depth and open. You very quickly build up 80 to 100 million tonnes in there. And then more importantly, if you go sort of to the bottom right, there are two sort of larger antimony and soil anomalies with coincident gold anomalies that are both, almost a kilometre long. And that is the main regional structural trend as well. So, there is a lot of follow-up here. And, the aim here is that we'll get a very big system. It's not going to be 2 grams a tonne gold. It will be sort of, a gram or maybe less. But again, if you get enough of it, that kind of system is very economical. And, so look, in terms of, go forward plan in Ecuador, it's really all about assaying these 56 core holes for the next, 3 or 4 months. We will probably then jump in and twin a couple of these holes just purely to see what we then can get into a JORC resource very cheaply. And, this will not break the bank. We've got 6 million cash at bank at the moment, and everything I've spoken about here is covered by that 6 million. And we run into December with, 1.5, 2 million in the bank. What we're doing here is we're reassaying core at $25 a metre compared to drilling holes at $300 a metre. So, you should hopefully we'll get a nice big uplift out of, this in the next 3 to 4 months, sooner. So again, just to sort of summarise, our aim, like everyone, we want to become a significant, gold producer. Why can we do it? It's really, to be honest, we've just got lucky. So what we've got is we've got a high grade resource that will produce, a really low risk, high cash flow in Julian. You sort of roll forward to where we've got 1.5 million ounces, and that's doing 150,000 ounces a year. That will effectively fund the company and fund development of a large lower grade gold system, which might end up being a 300,000 or 400,000 ounce a year producer in El Guabo. And what do you see for the next 3 or 4 months? You've got continued drilling results, continued results in Ecuador, metallurgy, resource, constant catalysts and news flow to hopefully see the stock re-rated, very quickly over the coming sort of, starting in 1 or 2 weeks. So look, thank you very much for your time, and I will sort of happily take any questions now.
So let's jump right into it. We have a few questions here. The first question we have is from Warwick, and he wants to know, when do you expect Waliland gold results?
Yeah, sure. So look, Warwick, good news is we'll actually be putting out the first 8 holes this morning before the market opens, and which means I'm free to talk about them. We've got some great hits in there. We've got a result of 8.3 metres at 21.1 grams gold equivalent on the Magnata vein, which pushed the Magnata vein 40 metres along strike. There was a high grade core in there of 25 metres at almost 5.5 metres at almost 30 grams gold equivalent. Hole 18, we've got almost 4 metres at 12 grams gold equivalent, and that's on the Magnata vein, pushing at 40 metres along strike the other way. Then hole 16, we've got a 9 metre intercept there, which is averaging around about 7 or 8 grams gold equivalent. So, there'll be 8 holes out this morning, and we're very pleased with the results.
Excellent. Another question here from Hugo. Hey, Hugo, actually, I remember you from earlier today. Thanks for showing up to Challenger Exploration's event. He wants to know, how is your cash flow?
Okay, so cash at the bank at the moment is just over 6, and where we land doing everything that I spoke about in the presentation as we run into January with between 1.5 and 2 million in the bank. So we're fully funded for the rest of the year. And, we've then got enough cash left to basically either continue drilling, which is the plan, or have some breathing space, so that really we're not sort of out looking to raise money at the moment. We've got enough cash there to do the program and re-rate the company before we look at that.
Awesome. Andres wants to know about Ecuador's property. Is there still artisanal mining activity in the project area? If so, what plan do you have to deal with them?
Yeah, no, there's not artisanal mining in the project area. When we arrived, there were about 150 artisanal miners. And look, we were a little bit sort of sneaky. We worked with ARCOM and basically had the concession changed over from a small-scale mining concession to basically we had exploitation banned, and we've left it open for surface exploration. So we've now cleaned out all the artisanal miners. And a lot of those guys who were artisanal miners are now working for us, moving core boxes around and as field assistants. So the community is quite happy. But no, we have moved out all the artisanals, which can be a problem in Ecuador.
Great. Question here from Jim Carl. What is the plan to mitigate the risk of the government coming in and nationalizing the mine or very heavily taxing the mine more than currently expected?
Yeah, look, in terms of, I suppose, Argentina, no risk at all. I mean, the new president is, okay, he came in on a Peronis ticket, but he's pro-mining. We've sort of had feedback from the mining minister in San Juan, which is basically his instructions are to do absolutely everything he can to get new mines up and running, because really where else is Argentina going to get $6 billion worth of, foreign currency every year? And, a good example of that is we had a toll treatment approach for our oxides, and we had a conversation with the mining ministry in San Juan, and the response was, look, if you guys can get a toll treatment deal done and you want to do it, we'll give you all the approvals to basically move your tails and some of the oxide ore in 3 or 4 weeks. So I don't see a risk at all. Ecuador, where we're lucky is that El Oro province, where we are in the south, the major industry there is mining. Portobello has been a mining centre for really, the last 100 years, and the province is pro-mining. Having said that, the key in Ecuador is you've got to have an Ecuadorian team. You've got to really do the environmental work correctly. You've got to have a social worker. So, look, Ecuador, do I see a risk? No, I don't. When you negotiate your final sort of contracts of work, you lock in the fiscal terms for the life of the project, and recently the government has come out and they've removed the super profits tax they had, so they are pro-mining as well. Next question, Bianca.
Absolutely. Next question here. Mario wants to know, do you have Ecuadorian offices? How can you be reached in order for local companies to reach you, or I guess also locals generally to reach you?
Yeah, no, look, we do. In Ecuador, we've got a team of, and I'm a great believer in you've got to have a local team and be part of the community. We've got 6 geologists in Ecuador. Our office is in Tarata, which is about 5 k's from site. We run under the banner of EMSA, which is Ecuadorian Mining Company. And we've got a staff there, including sort of field assistants, and we've got some admin people of around about 20 staff full time. If he wants to send you an email, I'm happy to pass on the details there in country.
Excellent. Michael Silver wants to know, where do the assays get done? How quickly do results, at what cost per assay? And are you considering getting your own drilling rigs?
That's exactly the type of question I would expect an ex-mining engineer like Michael to ask. Okay. So assays are currently done. We use ALS for both Argentina and Ecuador. The sort of standard 40-element assay suite with a gravimetric finish is costing us about $37 per assay. And we generally, look, we do logically in Argentina, Ecuador, we're generally doing sort of, 2 to 4 metre splits. So it's only costing us $10 to $20 a metre. In Argentina, we use the lab in Mendoza, who at the moment are flying the pulps up to Vancouver. We talk with them every day about, what is the quickest way. And at the moment, that is still the quickest way while the backlog in their main lab in Peru clears. In Ecuador, we're actually at the moment using SGS rather than ALS, we will use simply because SGS seem to have less of a backlog. So, we submit the core in Quito, they've got a sample prep lab, and then they actually run it through their SGS lab in Peru, which seems to be much quicker. And again, that's a similar cost. I think it's $39 per assay for your standard 40 elements with a gravimetric finish.
Great. Brian Morin wants to know, are you advocating for Tier 2 investing in gold ore?
I'm actually not quite sure what that question means, sorry.
I don't know either. By all means, Brian, if you want to jump back in with an explanation, go for it. In the meantime, though, we'll jump in with Bernie's question here. He says, hello, Kris, question from Ecuador. Congrats first on the great work at the highly prospective El Oro province. Can you provide a bit of background on your JV partners in Ecuador?
Yeah, so look, our JV partner on the original concession is actually an Ecuadorian company that's owned by a Portuguese national. So they were producing about 1,000 ounces of gold a year. And our JV partner in the large, the other concession where we've recently announced that gold discovery, that is a local Ecuadorian company that I think was backed by some money out of China. But it's called Gold King SA. They have a team on the ground of about 150 miners producing about 10,000 ounces a year, gold and silver in concentrate, which they're shipping back to China, I think. But, the ownership in that company is part Ecuadorian and part Chinese investors.
Great. Question here from Jim Carl. Will this presentation / recording be available on your website? I was 12 minutes late and would like to hear the first part.
Yes, it will be, and as soon as Bianca gets us the link, we'll get that up on our website.
Absolutely, that's something I can shed some light on. We'll be aiming to get this all mapped out and edited and in a recording for you in the next 24 hours, and then we'll be sure to get it to your way, Jim. All right, jumping into another question here. Matt Johnson says, great presentation, Kris. To summarize, we will have an announcement today on Waliland results and then the result of assays to follow every 2 weeks. In addition to that, the re-assays of existing holes from Colorado V will continue to come through in the next couple of weeks. What is your expectation on these re-assays?
Yeah, look, so 100% correct. So, we're now seeing that backlog being cleared. So I would hope that every 2 or 3 weeks we'll put out a bunch of, and look, we're not going to put out individual holes in Argentina. We're in the middle of an 80-hole program. So I think, the smallest number we want to put out is 8 to 10. Really we put out the first 8 here simply because, to demonstrate to the market we are getting assays. In Colorado V, my expectations, this hole that we assayed first was one of the ones where we had more assaying done by the Chinese, and what we found was basically over the higher grade zones, their results were fairly spot on, and over the sort of lower grade zones, they were generally 0.2 of a gram higher than normal. We think they'd sort of smeared the assays. Look, and visually only, the next sort of 5 holes, we've got 2 holes out of the next 5 that look sort of similar or better to this hole visually. And, look, I suppose I preface that by saying, I've assayed a lot of cores that look, really fantastic and exciting, and you don't get assay results. And conversely, that hole 20 in Waliland that went 8 meters at 21, when we looked at that, we went, oh, yuck, that's not really exciting. So you never know until you assay. But, what do I think? Yes, I think these next 7 holes will get a couple that aren't as good, and we should get a couple that are as good or better. And that will give us a feel for, what the project is.
Excellent. Question here from Hugo. How easy is it to get to the mining area and have workers on site?
Yeah, so look, in Argentina, very simple. I mean, we fly, I fly into Mendoza, and then it's about a 3.5-hour drive. We've got most of our work is in Argentina. In Argentina, we've got 3 local geos. We've got a camp manager. We've got a driller that we've got a contract who's managing the drilling, and they all live in San Juan, so it's an hour and a half from site. When they're there, they all stay in Los Flores, which is about 15, 20 k's north of the project. And really, it's a 15, 20-minute drive along a double-lane sealed highway. That sort of photo you're seeing now, just out of shot on the left, is a double-lane sealed highway that Barrick pay to maintain because it's the road they get their staff in and out of San Juan City to Veladero on. So, really simple. It's actually very good logistics. I mean, the Australian equivalent is basically, Waliland would sit an hour and a half's drive out of Kalgoorlie in WA. In Ecuador, again, it's quite easy. We fly into Tirada Airport from Quito, or we fly into Guayaquil, and then Guayaquil, it's a 3.5-hour drive to site. Our office is in Tirada town, which is a little town of about 500 people. We've got an office and 6 apartments there that all the staff stay at, and it's literally a 10-minute drive. The last 2 k's are on a fairly rough dirt track, but 10-minute drive from the office to get to site. So it's really good logistics in both.
Great. Jim wants to know, will the stock be available on any of the U.S. exchanges?
In the short term, no, it won't. I'm a sort of firm believer in that, just because you list on NASDAQ doesn't mean you get valued at a silly multiple. And generally in this day and age, with for retail investors or institutions, most institutions have the ability to trade on any exchange. And really, as a retail investor, some of the platforms now, like Interactive Brokers, you can basically trade on any exchange anyway. So no, there is no sort of near-term plan to be listed on one of the US exchanges.
Great. Another question here: how big do you think the Wallyland gold system can ultimately be?
Yeah, good question. Look, the 600,000 ounces that are there now is basically 20% of the footprint area. If you look at that actual system, the extreme southern end of the resource has more copper. It's a higher temperature assemblage, so we think the southern end is where the actual source is. So, if you want to take the upside case, you take that 600,000 ounces, you double it and roll it round to the south again, and then you say, well, that's 20% of the footprint. I mean, it could be a monster system. We really will know in 12 months whether this thing is 600,000 ounces going on a million, or whether it's 600,000 ounces going on a couple of million, 3 million ounces or more. We really just got to get in there, and we need to drill another 400 or 500 holes to know exactly how big it is. But do I think it's more than a million? Yes. Could it be 3 or 4? Yes.
Great. Question here from Derek McComber. He wants to know, how quickly could you have a JORC on Colorado IRGS?
Yeah, Colorado V. So we've got all of the drill core. We're planning on reassaying all of that now. That'll take us about 3 months. And then really we may need to twin 1 or 2 holes, but there's no reason why we can't have a JORC resource on Colorado V in that area that's been drilled up by the small scale miners within the next 3 months, maybe 4. That is the aim. We'll push to get all that core reassayed, and then if we think we need to twin a couple of holes, then we'll do that. But definitely by the end of the year we can get a resource out there that I think will it be more than 60 million tonnes? Yes. The only real question is, what grade does it go?
Mm-hmm. On a similar vein, Matt Johnson's asking, so the focus in Ecuador is Colorado V over El Guayabo in the short term?
Yes, it is. And, that's not because I don't really love the targets we've got in El Guayabo. It's simply, I've got a choice here where I can drill, 1,000-metre holes at $300, $400 a metre, and I probably need to drill 20 before I get into something. Or for $20 a metre, I've got 60 holes there that really we look at half of those and they're quite exciting. And so it's a case of I can either spend $6 million or I can spend a couple of $100,000 to get the same result. And look, El Guayabo is a really prospective, and I think there'll be a couple of big porphyry systems there. But really, that's a case of let's get 6 months worth of strong news out of Argentina and Colorado V. Get the stock significantly higher, and then I'll take $20 or $30 million and do a proper drill out program in El Guayabo.
Great. Brad Atkinson wants to know, hi Kris, great presentation. Are you still undergoing any issues with COVID at either of the sites? Also, would like to know what you might see as the biggest headwind for Challenger going forward.
Yeah, so look, in terms of COVID in Argentina, there have only been 2 cases in San Juan province. And, that was because the Argentinian government acted very early and very aggressively, and, all of their province borders in Argentina and the actual, external border are still closed. If you want to travel between provinces, you need it's a 2-week quarantine. For us, that doesn't affect us at all. I mean, basically, again, the model is having local geos on site. We've got 3 really good gold geos who are all multilingual, bilingual. So we're using San Juan-based drilling companies. So, it doesn't affect us at all. We're sort of still drilling. The only sort of impact on the drilling has been that because we've only got the 2 crews, we give them 10 days on, then 4 days off, rather than rotating another crew to get around the quarantine. We've got approval to basically transport the core across the border to Mendoza. Where it's affected us has been the assays, and that looks like it's starting to come good, given we've got a bunch of sort of 6 holes 48 hours ago. In terms of Ecuador, different story. The stories you hear about dead bodies lining the streets in Guayaquil are correct. We're back to work now. We're lucky in that we're effectively a small country town that is, 150 k's from the centre of it. We're careful. We've got all of the COVID protocols in place. Everyone's wearing masks. And really, because we're isolated, we've got sort of, a team of 3 geos and fieldies that live in the community that are purely focusing on logging and sampling the core for assaying. And then that core is transported commercially up to Quito for assay. So we're being careful. It cost us 2 months, but we're back in the field now.
Great. Michael Silver wants to know, well, first he comments, Kris, indeed a good presentation. Apart from you, who is your chief geological consultant?
Yeah, so look, I've got an exploration manager, Stuart Munro, who is, he was SRK's sort of gold project manager. He did the initial sort of pre-IPO work and DD on the project, and I could tell there that he wasn't an SRK guy. He looked at me and said, geez, you can have a lot of fun with these projects. So after a bit of perseverance, we picked up Stuart. So Stuart is our exploration manager. He's got 20 years in the industry. He's been an exploration manager of small companies before. We've got a sort of technical consultant, John King, out of the US, who we fly in and fly out, who sort of does some senior level advising. John is in his sort of early 70s, but there is no substitute for someone who's spent 40 years looking at core. So, when we've got something, we use John. We've also got Luciano Boccanegra, who is a really well-known South American porphyry consultant. We get Luciano there 2 or 3 weeks every sort of 3 or 4 months to have a look at what we're doing. And then, the team we've got in Ecuador, there's 6 geos there. 3 of them are Western trained. So you've got some good geologists there, and then same thing in Argentina. We've got 3 geos there that are Western trained and really good geos. So we've got a pretty rounded team. But where we're lucky is because we've got quality Argentinian and Ecuadorian geos, we really you don't need me on site there. They can run the whole thing smoothly without me getting to site. Having said that, as soon as travel restrictions are lifted, then I do tend to spend half my life there, just because you've got to. You there, Bianca?
Yes, I am. Sorry, my audio must have cut out just for a second, but I am here and we have more questions. This one's from Matt Johnson, and he wants to know, do you think Colorado and El Guayabo are linked?
Yeah, we do. I mean, if you look at, we sort of re-assayed some holes in El Guayabo. We didn't make a song and dance about it because they were assayed by Newmont, but there's a hole there that went 150 metres at 2.5 grams a tonne gold. And if you sort of go back to that slide I showed of Colorado V, where you've got the extensions on that soil antimony map down to the sort of bottom right of page, if you go another sort of 2.5 kilometres down that sort of zone, that's where that 150 metres at 2.5 gram gold intercept sits. So I think you've got a big sort of this thing is controlled by this big main regional structure. So yeah, look, I think they're a similar system. Whether or not they're a porphyry system is still to be known. We think it's going to be a bit like Cangrejos, hopefully higher grade, because we've got that sort of extra early phase of copper mineralisation in the system that they don't have.
Great. Derek McComber wants to know, any potential JV partners for deeper porphyry targets at El Guayabo, having a look at data?
Look, we've had one approach us, I mean, they tend to kick a lot of tires in Ecuador. The challenge I've got is the moment that I farm that package out to a major, I'm a hostage. I've got 25 or 30 or 20%, depending on how I do my deal, and then I'm purely a price taker. That is not the aim here. I mean, what we'll do is, we're lucky that we've got a second project that will carry expenditure in Ecuador. So really the plan is, once we've got 20 to 30 in the bank, we'll spend 15 doing a high impact program in Ecuador. And then if we get into it and find out it's not there, rather than spend another $50 million trying to prove that I was right and I'm smart, you walk away. So no, look, I think when a major comes into Ecuador, it's hopefully to partner with us to put it in production or to take us out. I'm certainly not going to give away the farm now, simply because if I didn't have a second project, I'd have no choice. But no, that's not the plan now. We've got some world-class targets there that I'd like to drill and capture all the upside for shareholders.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of, Derek wants to know, at Wallyland, the center of the system is further south than previously thought. What is the tenement boundary situation? You said mineralization continued 5 kilometers south. How far is the boundary?
Yeah, so to the south, we've got around about 4 kilometres of strike covered, and then to the north, we go about, I think it's about 3.5, 4. So, yeah, we're quite well covered. In terms of the minas that we've got, the way a mina works in Argentina is if you demonstrate mineralisation extending down dip, you're automatically granted an adjoining mina. So, technically I don't need the EL. I mean, I just don't fancy explaining that to the Australian market. So, look, we've got 3.5, 4K strike either side of the project at the moment. Having said that, we're in discussions with the chaps who own further north and further south at the moment as well, because we've got a window to increase the footprint there, which is a smart thing to do.
Great. At this point, we have one more question, and then I will throw it back to you, Kris, for the final word. Final question here is, what are you looking forward to the most in terms of the events that will unfold in the next month or so?
Yeah, look, I mean, I suppose most people would say assay results out of Colorado B, and I am going to be excited to see those. And, I think the next half a dozen holes will really paint a picture that we've got a very big gold system that, is going to have a lot of upside. For me, I'm probably more interested in the metallurgical results we're going to get out of Wallyland. I think if all of a sudden we're getting, high 80s, 90% recovery rather than sort of, 80% recovery, that is where you go from being a low cost to an ultra low cost project. And also from an institutional point of view, they've sort of made it loud and clear known to us that really they're looking for the metallurgy to be done before you sort of start to see some significant institutional presence on the register as well. So, I'm actually more excited by what we get back with the metallurgical testing, and hopefully that gives us a very nice surprise.
Great. I know I said last question, but we just have one last one sneak in here if you're game for it, Kris.
Yeah, sure.
Great. This one is from Stephen Light. He says, "Hi, Kris. Great presentation, mate. Any update or progress with Karoo in South Africa? And if not, would you consider selling to raise funds?"
So, look, there's been a number of updates. The Karoo, for those that don't know, that's a legacy asset in Challenger. It's a shale gas concession in the Karoo Basin in South Africa. It's sort of ranked in the top 8 shale gas provinces in the world. There's the US Geological Survey have come in and basically put a prospective resource in Challenger's concession there at around about 5 TCF, and that is only from the lower part of the concession. So it's a world-class asset. Challenger had a $100 million farm-out deal done 6 years ago when it looked like that concession was being awarded, and really they ran out of time, and that's why these projects had to go in. Would I sell it now? No. We've had offers, but we'd probably end up with $500,000 or $1 million worth of shares in a small company. Once it's awarded and granted, and I can't tell you if that's in the next 6 months or 6 years, then totally different story. I mean, it doesn't fit with our assets in South America, but we certainly want to get the best value for shareholders. So, really, it doesn't cost us anything. It's a free option until the concession is granted, and then once the concession's granted, and hopefully we've got a $30 or $40 million asset, then we'll actually deal with it rather than try to move it along now for $500,000 worth of shares in something.
Great. And with that, we're going to wrap up the investor Q&A period. A big thank you to everyone who attended and everyone who submitted their questions. If for whatever reason we didn't get to your question, or you had a question you couldn't ask here, feel free to reach out either to us directly at friends@six.com and we'll send it along to Kris, or you can reach out to Challenger Exploration directly. And without further ado, I'm going to pass it along to you, Kris, for the final word.
Yeah, look, I'd just like to thank everyone for listening. And again, if there are any more questions, feel free at the bottom of our ASX releases, and there'll be one this morning you can get from the ASX platform at asx.com.au or our website. Happy if you send me an email. As the CEO, basically, I get the companies owned by shareholders, and my job is to work for shareholders. So if anyone's got any more questions, more than happy to have a conversation or answer questions via email. I'm excited by what's happening, and really I think the next 3 months is probably going to be a very exciting next 3 months for Challenger. So thank you everyone for your time.
Great. Thanks and take care.